Welcome folks. Time for another episode, or should we call it an installment, of the rebuilding of the Thermoquad carburetor. Okay, what you see before you, which I'll be zooming into nice and close to show you what's going on here. Those are the seals that go between the air horn where it dips down into the float bowl here. Most critical part of the rebuilding of these things, or even if you have a Thermoquad that's getting a bit on the old side, and especially if it had like the two lower ones, these shriveled up and they don't seal that well once these things are assembled. So that's one of the primary concerns with the Thermoquad, is if you have the older material, they tend to dry up, or maybe it's something to do with the gasoline formulation that causes havoc with them, or just an older material that they had in the earlier to mid 70s. Whereas the top ones here, they seem to be a more pliable type of a rubber kind of a compound that they're making them out of these days. Probably an improvement, possibly, because haven't had any problems with the ones in the rebuild kits that come with the what they call the X-ring. Now if you were to chop a section out of that thing, it wouldn't look like a standard O-ring where it's just a round section. These ones actually, if you took a little, a sliver out of them and looked at them from the side, it would show an X, because they got grooves on both the inside and outside diameter, as well as the top and bottom, to help seal these things when you torque down those 10 machine screws to hold this thing together. So now what I'll do is I'll zoom in. I was fortunate enough to find on the bottom there some original ones that came out of a factory Thermoquad, and you can see how distorted looking they are. As the top ones are the top ones are used from a rebuild kit that came out of this, I believe it was this particular $25 Thermoquad here that I've got in front of you now, that I've been using for the rebuild series and the general information series on the Thermoquad. So what's there on the bottom, you can see they're all shriveled up and dried. I put my fingernail, or should I say my thumbnail, into them, and they're hard as a rock. Okay, they're not pliable like the top ones. These probably a different material that they're using in them, like I was mentioning, and they do seem to stay soft. Like this one was out of this $25 rebuild carb I'm using for the videos. It's all grimy, dirty. It was just purchased to get me some metering rods and mostly the primary jets that I had to rejet another carb with. So these came out of there. Now I have no idea whether this was rebuilt somewhere along the way before I got a hold of it, but these are what came out of this one, and they're still soft and pliable. Like I can squeeze these and make a football shape with them, whereas these one, if I tried to squeeze them too hard, they would probably just fracture and break into pieces. So there's a number one item I'd like to warn everybody about that's got a Thermoquad. So if you have something that's blowing a lot of gas fumes, in other words unburned fuel out of your tailpipe, or the choke isn't working properly, this is how I discovered what the problem was. Between that and floats, the phenolic resin, not the phenolic resin, that's the float bowl, the nitrophyll floats, the plastic floats, they absorb, most of them will absorb fuel over time and start to sink, causing a rich mixture. But this is a real bad one if you happen to get some of the X-rings or O-rings like these that dry and shrivel up while they're installed in the carb, because it's lower than the fuel level when the float bowls are both full of fuel. Okay, so that'll just trickle down, and it creates, it'll go through the, I should back up a little bit now maybe to show you where this bamboo skewer is pointing. Okay, let's back out a little bit. So they sit right in here. I've highlighted the part where they go straight down into this little horseshoe shaped chalk highlight I have here on the edge of the Thermoquad. I'll be removing this little piece of plywood with the X-rings on there and showing how the easiest way to install these things goes. But like I say, the seal area is way down in there where these little seals fit. Okay, so what happens is when the fuel level is at its correct level and the engine's running, the fuel will go down into the main jet and it'll curl back up into where these O-ring or X-ring seals are. And if they're not sealing properly, it'll just sort of waterfall itself over into the primary throttle bores on top of this lower ledge here. They had to lower this in order to get the aluminum top casting or air horn to fit in there. So if these aren't sealing properly and you have the float bowls being filled with gasoline, it'll just do the old waterfall effect on you. Like I say, it goes through the main jet, and it comes up through here where the seals are, and then it'll just trickle right over. So you got to make sure that these X-rings are in good condition, and that they do get the proper squish. Good idea, like I had a comment added in the question about how much compression was on these when you actually assemble it, taking in consideration all the manufacturing tolerances and the actual thickness of the X-rings or O-rings, call them what you will. And then also the top gasket that goes on top of the air horn, and you have to measure everything up. So I came up with an average of around, I believe it was 11 thousandths of an inch, which isn't very much. And then if you go the other way, where everything is, if the float bowl is a little bit taller, and say the aluminum projections where it seals down on top from the top casting is a little bit on the short side, you might not get much squish on these X-rings, and even with new ones in there, it might not give you the best seal ever. So it's a good idea if you got the measuring equipment. Vernier calipers would be good. Their micrometer, whatever you've got, measure the thickness of the new X-rings, the depth from the top of the float bowl down into where the X-ring sits on the surface in the phenolic resin float bowl. And then they have to compensate for the gasket being squeezed. It's about 25 or 30 thousandths on this gasket that sits on top once those 10 machine screws are tightened down. And then as well as you have to measure the protrusion from the air horn casting where it goes down in there. You have to do the simple math it requires to see how much squish you're going to have once you torque those 10 machine screws down. And hopefully you have 10 thousandths or a little bit more maybe. But there's ways you can get around that if it's not giving you enough squish as well. I might detail that a bit more in some of the other videos I make in the future. But for now, what you really got to watch is to make sure that you have some good ones in the rebuild kit. Now, when you get your rebuild kit and you get these two X-rings in the rebuild kit, give them a little squeeze and see if you can turn them into a football. I'll actually demonstrate here. You just get them and you take them and give them a light squeeze and see if they'll turn into a football shape for you. I wonder if I can turn that and get the lighting right. But give them a little squeeze and they should rebound back to the round, and you could actually roll them in your finger. Make sure that they're soft and pliable. That'll tell you probably got a good one there. Actually, I took a closer look at these ones where you see they're all shriveled up and everything, and you know, they're all egg-shaped. It appears that they could have been an X-ring shape. I was under the assumption that they were O-rings, standard O-rings, but I was taking a closer look at this, and apparently it looked like it could have been an X-ring. I mean, it's all deformed and excuse me, it's they're all dried up and brittle. Excuse me, too much talking. Anyways, I'll remove this now. Now they're giving you the lowdown on these newer ones versus older ones. I'm guessing here at this point. I have no way of confirming that. I just by, you know, the inspections and the visuals I've been getting and seeing what I've got here. But like I say, these are the bottom ones are all shriveled up. We're out of an actual factory. It wasn't rebuilt. And these top ones, I have no idea. They came out of here, so I don't know if it was rebuilt or maybe this was rebuilt a while later. It's out of a 74 to 1977 440 engine truck, I believe. So anyways, there's what to watch out for in your X-rings. Call them O-rings if you want, but they've got grooves on all surfaces, all four surfaces, top, bottom, inside and outside diameters. So we'll take the good ones and I'll show you how to do it. You can just go ahead and put them down in there and then poke around, but we're going to be using the bamboo skewer trick on this one. They come in pretty handy. You say you get 50 to 100 for $1 at a dollar store or what have you, in housewares, any place if you so decide to go this route. But just basically get an O-ring. Okay, it's going to slide down much like ring toss. Okay, so you just I'll actually show you. I've got a flashlight here. You put the bamboo skewer, safety glasses, you got a pointy end here, and these things tend to be, you know, really sharp on the end. You don't want to poke your eye, so really be careful. Okay, so just stick it down in the hole. You can see I've got it highlighted with white chalk here, and I'll see if I can get a light on it there. And right down in there is the surface where the X-ring sits, where the bamboo skewer is down at the bottom there. You just put that in the hole like so. Now I'm going to have to remove the light in order to work this thing, so you basically, I'll even use needle nose pliers here and get my hand out of the way. But so I'll show you on the angle here, and I'm just going to slip this O-ring on top of the bamboo skewer like so. Okay, there it sits there on the bamboo skewer, ring toss if you will. I'm just going to hold it with the pliers to keep my hand out of the way, and you just put the bamboo skewer vertical, and then you just gently drop it down in there. Okay, so this is the quickest way to do it. Then don't think you're done there. Poke around on top of it, make sure that it's sitting flat down on the surface where it's going to be compressed by the air horn or top casting once it's assembled with those 10 machine screws. So same thing for the other side. Poke your skewer if you wanted to go this way, and just drop your O-ring over top of it, and just drop it down in there like so. Give it a poke a little bit, make sure it's sitting flat. Get yourself, excuse me, if you're working in a darker area. I've got 3 big light bulbs going here, and it doesn't seem to be enough for the video work, so I'm going to add a flashlight there, and you can see, just have a look down, have a look, see, make sure they're sitting flat right down in the phenolic resin float bowl. You've got 2 of them, remember, one for the left front throttle bore or primary throttle bore, and one for the right side, left and right. So make sure you have both of them in there before you install the air horn or top casting. Okay, so they're in there. So you're at this point you're ready to install the air horn, which will be in the next video. Okay, I may have uploaded these things in reverse order or whatever, but I'm sure you can figure out that you do need those X rings, or call them O rings if you will, because if you don't put them in there, I'll tell you what's going to happen. You're going to get the fuel doing, once the float bowls rather fill up with fuel. Okay, the float shut off the incoming fuel, but that'll only sustain the level here. Now it'll keep adding fuel because the fuel is being dumped into the primary throttle bores at an enormous rate. And that's where you'll notice if you get a lot of fumes coming from your car, or you can't get the choke to go lean enough when you make adjustments, which is one of the things I found. As well as, like I say, I'll mention again the nitrofill or plastic style floats. These absorb gasoline. I'll just keep reminding from time to time just to make sure that you don't get caught with that sinking on you. But these are #1 reason why you will get a rich running Thermoquad, and it affects the way the whole thing runs. Your choke cycle, fuel economy, if you can keep this thing running, that is, with all that smoke billowing out of your tailpipe, the mileage is going to suffer terribly. You're going to get really poor gas mileage. So there you have it, folks. That's today's episode, or installment if you will, on the Thermoquad, and I can't stress enough, make sure these O-rings get squished down at least 10 thousandths worth. Any less than that, even 5 thousandths, is not much compression. If you have to go with 5 thousandths of an inch, just keep an eye on that, make sure that you're not getting that fuel and doing the waterfall effect down into the primary throttle bores there. So keep those seals in good condition. Even the rebuild, if you don't do anything else on the rebuild, just got to make sure that those X rings or O rings are in good shape and pliable, because once they shrivel up like these ones that I was showing you, okay, they're virtually no good to anybody at that point, except I'm glad I kept them because I can actually show you how bad they get. These ones are brittle, they've shriveled, they've turned into footballs, and you can see that they're no longer round in shape. Okay, so there you have it, folks. There's today's installment. Take care, have a nice day, and bye for now.